Welcome to Senior Living Marketing Perspectives. I'm Debbie Howard with Senior Living Smart, and today I am thrilled to have Donna Cutting, who's the founder and CEO of Red Carpet Learning Worldwide, a learning and development firm that works with leaders in the caring fields to create cultures of happy, engaged people delivering excellent service. She's the author of 3 books, including one of my favorites, 501 Ways to Roll Out the Red Carpet for Your Customers. Donna has been named one of the top 30 global gurus. Congratulations, Donna, a guru. I love that. In service several times in a row, and red carpet programs are being used throughout the US, as well as in South Africa, Australia, Canada, and Spain. So welcome, Donna.
Hi, Deborah. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for that great introduction.
I love having a guru on the podcast. I think that's wonderful.
That's all thanks to my wonderful customers. So shout out to them.
And Donna and I go back quite a ways, actually, to when I was VP of Sales and Marketing at Five Star. And we brought Donna in to really help us with just some overall kind of customer service and employee empowerment programs, but also somewhat focusing on how can we really create a red carpet tour and move-in process, because that's really where hospitality kind of meets sales.
Exactly. There is a direct link, as a matter of fact, between hospitality or service and sales. And I'm right on board with that, Deborah.
Yeah, awesome. So today we're going to talk a little bit about preparing for the tour, executing a great tour, getting the team engaged, because as we all know, sales is not a solo sport. And then also really the promises that we make in the sales process and getting into the transition into the community and all of those touch points. So I'm thrilled to dig in. So let's talk about tour planning. How can the planning and kind of up leveling of tours really impact sales? And what are some of the things you put into place that you've seen impact?
Yeah, I think first of all, we're talking about intention, right? And so being really intentional about what that tour experience looks like, whether it's a tour that you're prepared for, in other words, that it's coming, or being prepared for those tours that just show up, that just happen. And let me just say, it starts with discovery. So one of the things that wasn't in that introduction that I'll mention is that now not only am I a consultant to the field of senior living, but also I'm a family member now of
Yeah, that's
someone
right.
who is living in memory care now, but was in assisted living to start. And so we went through that whole process. And I'll just say discovery, really understanding, yes, the needs and the wants and the history of the person who may be moving into your community, the prospective resident. But also, I'm going to say being there for the family member, because I can tell you right up front that I've worked in this field now for 4 decades when I was actually in a job, and now as a consultant for 26 years. And when you have a family member going through this, it is a completely different experience. You forget everything.
It's true.
You forget everything. There's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of family dynamics. So I'll even tell you from our own experience, the people who really sat there and listened and were transparent, we'll talk about that later, and really wanted to get to know what was going on with my mom, made the biggest impression, other than the ones who just went right to the tour.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. But then also understanding that the more you know about the prospective resident, the better you can prepare for that tour. Who are the people that are going to be the best people for that prospective resident and their family members to meet, to hear from? What are I know Tracy Bill of Build and Company calls them the one extras, right? What are the one extras that are going to be actually meaningful to that person and that family member? Because really, this is a significantly emotional time for everyone. And so the more, if you really think about how do I want people to feel during the tour or before the tour, during the tour, and after the tour, what are the emotions you want to elicit and or tap into? And then what are the strategies? Whether it's really deeply listening, planning for those one extras, planning for the people that they want to meet, where are the places you're going to take them? Because, that are really going to be meaningful, as opposed to here's the mailboxes, which is fine. I mean, it's fine to show the mail. Where do you want to spend the most time? Because that's what's going to provide that feeling of safety, that feeling of those positive emotions, those feelings of connection that are hopefully, if you're the right fit, hopefully are going to help you make the sale to that resident.
Yeah. So it's really how do you become memorable and how do you create that sense of belonging and safety for the family member?
Yeah, that's huge. I think the sense of safety. And then also, I do want to say, the more you understand is so important. So again, that discovery piece, and then understanding that what is it that you bring to the table, and that it might not be a fit for everybody, but that who the people are that you're a fit for. So
Mhm.
I'll give you an example. So we were looking for an assisted living for my mom. We really narrowed it down and we did our research, you
Yeah.
know. So just that's also something to understand, is that we looked at every possibility in the area where we wanted to look. We looked at their websites. We called a few. Based on how the phone was answered, we
Yeah.
narrowed it down. And then we really narrowed it down to 3 places. And 2 of them were strong contenders. And at the end of the day, it was basically because one of them was really fancy, like a fancy hotel. One of
Yeah.
them was beautiful, but a little more homey. And we knew that a little more homey was going to be right for my mom. That's
Right.
not for everybody. There were plenty of people, I think, that would have, where the other one would have been a good fit. So just knowing what your strengths are, but then also understanding the person that you are trying to invite into your community, and what are going to be the things that are really going to hit that person, be people to that person, as opposed to just a generic, here's our lovely lobby and here's
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Really lean into your strengths and differentiators. You can't be all things to all people. If you're homey, be homey. If you're luxury, be luxury. And people will feel that difference. I know when we were working with you at Five Star, you had talked about, and this was 15 years ago, about how colleges really had been doing some creative things to create that sense of belonging and excitement, and we're expecting you, and even as something as simple as like the signage. Can you talk a little bit about what you learned through that experience and how it can apply even in senior housing?
Yeah. So that's a specific university, actually. So that was High Point University in High Point, North Carolina. And by the way, I couldn't even tell you now, like the extent that they have grown through their experience. They've been at the top of the US News reports.
Yeah.
University won several awards. They've grown their campus. And really, even through COVID and through recession times where other colleges and universities, private universities, were not doing well, they were accelerating. And a lot of it was, going back to that word, intentional. They got very intentional about the tour experience for prospective students. So the first thing when people drove in, first to note, they drove in through security gate, had a very wonderful security guard who greeted them with a huge smile and all of that. And then she told them where to park. When they drove into the parking circle for the prospective students, there were these signs and they would have people's names on them. So Deborah, do you have children yourself?
Yeah, yep, we did the whole college thing.
Give me a name of one of your kids.
Oh, Scott
Scott. Okay. So there would be, and what's his last name?
Baldessari.
Baldessari. Okay. So let's say you would drive into the circle and you would find the sign that said High Point University welcomes Scott Baldessari. And like any good mom, as you park in, you get out, you're getting your iPhone out and taking a picture right next to
Yeah,
the, because there are lots of them that's been copied now, but at the time nobody else was doing that.
yeah,
Then you go into the building, there is someone there to greet you. Scott's name again is on a screen as the special guests of that day. There's coffee, there's juice, there's water, there's snacks. There's the welcome agent is like chatting with you before your tour guide comes. And then specifically in universities, a lot of times when you take a tour, you're walking through the campus with 50 other families. In this case, it's one or two other families in a golf cart, right? And
yeah,
so instead of walking, and then really looking at what were their differentiators. So one of the things that I love, one of the stories I love is that they have a valet parking for the students near the dorms. And everybody thinks, oh,
yeah,
valet parking. And of course, yeah, that's definitely part of the tuition. However, the purpose of the valet parking is that they understand that mom and dad who's raised this child and now they're going all the way, maybe sometimes across the country to go to school. And what if they're walking around
yeah.
after studying until 2 a.m. in the morning? And then they have to walk all the way through a dark parking lot to get to their dorm room. That is a concern.
Yeah,
And so they just took that concern away by adding valet parking. So that's the other thing. So yes, all of the special things. So the signage when people come in,
yeah,
and I see a lot of senior living communities doing that now more than they were doing 15 years ago.
yeah,
Lots of times the signage, having the person at the front desk know who's coming. I'd love to talk about that in a little bit.
yeah,
To understand, not just to make them welcome, but make them feel expected, not
yeah,
just welcome, but welcome and expected. And then really understanding the more you can understand what the actual concerns are before they come for the tour. And if it's a surprise tour, like before you walk them around, the more you can think about, okay, how are we going to address this concern
hmm,
in like they did at High Point University in a way that's going to make them, again, it's all about feeling safe. It's all about
yeah.
like that trust factor. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. I just love that example because a lot of those things are easy to do, but it takes planning. It takes, like to your point, it takes intention. And you really have to make it part of the culture of the community. And I remember when we were starting Senior Living Smart, we were still doing some consulting, and there was a community nearby, and I went in to assist with sales. And the first thing I did was say, hey, we've got to go out and get a sign that we can either have a wipe off that welcomes the person's name, because I know High Point had the money for electronic signs, and we couldn't do that, but we could put a piece of paper behind a plexiglass, print it out. Sometimes parking's an issue, right? And so you don't want somebody circling and thinking, this is a pain in the neck. If I can't park today, what happens when I come back on a weekend or for an event or something? And I never liked those signs, which kind of like future resident parking. I always felt like that was, I don't know.
There's just something about at any time that you can add that personalization factor,
Yes.
any time that you can do that, it's just a little bit of an edge over, like I said, we visited 3 places, right? And so any little personalization is just a little bit more of an edge than the other place.
It's memorable. You remember. Oh, remember that one that we drove in and there was that parking spot with our name on it and we didn't have to circle. And then you're also subtly creating that sense of belonging and expectation. We knew you were coming and we reserved this spot for you. Because sometimes I think the hardest walk, especially the first community that you visit, and is between the car and the front door, and you're thinking, oh, this is so hard, but they're expecting me, and somehow that gives you a little bit more encouragement. So
Yeah.
maybe you can talk a little bit about how planning tours really gives you that competitive edge and what aspects of the tour should you be planning?
Again, it's all about intention and not just winging it. And so I would really look at, first of all, really knowing the discovery. Okay. So, what are the needs and the wants? And also, what are some things that you're hearing behind the underneath between the lines? The Ritz-Carlton would say the express and unexpressed wishes of our guests. So if there's anything you're here, any concerns you're hearing between the lines that you can address. Okay. So now looking at all that information that you got, who are going to be, where is it? Where are the best places for you to take them in your community? What's going to make the best impression? If you hear things that are potentially not where you might not be a fit or there might be a concern, how are you going to address that objection and before they even bring it up, but you're hearing that in discovery? Who are the people, which residents would be great for them to meet, and which team members would be great for them to meet? And then are you going to put a sign? What are the personalization factors? So whether it's a sign, whether it's that in the model apartment, there's a book that relates to something that they really love, or maybe the welcome sign is also in the model apartment, right? What activities are going to be something that they're really going to connect to, right? So that could even be if it's possible for you to plan the tour
Yeah.
around activities, that's great. But if not, making sure they speak to your life enrichment coordinator. But I also want to say this, it's not just the people in sales and marketing that should be ready for this tour. It's also the entire team. And I know one of the things that we did, this was with one of the five-star communities, and we did actually shorten their sales cycle as a result of this. We got their entire team tour ready. So here's what that looked like. The marketing, sales and marketing people used to go to the department head meeting and they would say, here are the tours that we have coming in. And that was pretty much about it, right? So we developed these sheets that had a lot of non-HIPAA violation
Yeah.
information that they could share with everybody on the team. So first for managers, things like, again, who are like, were they veterans? Did they have a cat or a dog? Or what were their favorite hobbies? What were their favorite sports teams? Things that they found out right in discovery. And all of that would be on the sheet. Points of connection. What are all the different points of connection that you can make with this prospective resident? Now, that's great, but it used to just stop at the managers. And the one little shift that we made was that we had all of the managers sharing that information every day at a little stand-up meeting or on a bulletin board with their team member, with their regular staff, right? Hourly team members. And so then we trained their team members and talked to them about the importance and the role that they played in terms of these tours. We even had them practicing skills like eye contact and smiling and connecting with the resident, the prospective resident. And I remember in less than 3 days, I think I was at one community for 3 specific days of training. And on the first day, that marketing director was crying to me about the way things were going. And then on the third day, she came in crying again, thanking me and thanking everybody on the team because in just a matter of 24 hours, by setting that expectation and giving people skills practice and kind of a fun communal
Mhm.
thing, the whole team was fully engaged in those tours in a way that she had never seen before. And it was so simple. And I remember it was the maintenance person who was manager on duty one time who said to me, wow, the meeting and greeting really works. He was so excited because he got a bonus because he got a check that day. Yeah, and it wasn't even sales and marketing that gave the tour, it was the maintenance director. And so, yeah, it's like everybody plays a part in it. And the more you can prepare your team members to do a great job, the better impression and the more people are going to connect and build those relationships.
Yeah, and that community was like 96% occupied, so they could have been very complacent. Hey, we're almost full. We're not a focus community. We feel successful. But that difference between 96 and 100%, just from an operations perspective, that's pure revenue.
Yeah. And I think the community actually where the marketing director came in with a different one wasn't the one that was 97, but we did have one that was like 96, 97%. And I do remember them. I remember getting the feeling like they thought they had nothing left to learn. And then when they implemented these things, and the maintenance director was from there, they actually went up to 100% in a very short amount of time. And the executive director definitely said, "Oh yes, this is what gave us the competitive edge."
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Tell us a little bit about your surprise and delight and your take two process.
Yay. Okay, so we'll start with surprise and delight because I've got a great little tip for you, and it's called Secret Stash of Swag. So everybody gives the folder, maybe
Yeah.
mug full of candy with your logo on it, and all of that's great. But what if you really thought about who is this person? What's something that's going to be meaningful to them? And you give yourself that little edge by personalizing that surprise and delight. Here's something that some of our customers have used very effectively because a lot of times people get burnt out on the surprise and delight, right? I have to run out every time I have a tour. And
Yeah.
so we developed something called a secret stash of swag. And it's basically in a closet that you have where you think about all the different categories of things that are meaningful to people. So people love their pets. They love their grandchildren or their great grandchildren. They love their children too, but usually the little ones. They love their hobbies. They love their sports teams. They're proud of the fact that they were a veteran, a United States veteran. All of these different things. They love specific types of music. So if you think in those categories and then you just stock a closet with, it doesn't have to be expensive. It could be flag pins for veterans, right? Treats for dogs, treats for cats. One of the communities, they use balloons with sports teams on them. So those Mylar balloons, and they had
Yeah.
to blow it up. Now, this community was in New York, so they thought everybody was a Yankees fan, but then they realized to their dismay, not everybody was. So they got a bunch of them with different sports teams, but just so that you have it. And so you prepare that if you know the tour is coming in. But that's another thing. If you don't know the tour is coming in,
Yeah.
you can be ready for when you hear these things. And then as they're leaving, maybe you didn't make the first impression with the sign because you didn't know they were there, but you can make that last impression with a Patriots balloon. I'll say Patriot, right? You're from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Patriots balloon, yeah, or something like that. And so or the flag pin, or like, here's a little something for Snowball, or whatever.
Yeah.
You're making that personal connection that very few other people are making, right? Very few.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, so that's surprise and delight, and it's a little hack to make that easy. And the other thing I'll say about that before I get to take two is even if you had mugs, but you had a way to put people's name on it,
Mm.
and just that, so that when they leave, it actually has their name. Maybe you take a picture with them and send them a card with their picture. There's any number of things,
Yeah.
people's names, using what people love, and then connecting on the things that are really important to them.
Just that personalization. And
Yeah.
boy, everyone's going to be ordering Cricut machines and putting their little stickers on their mugs.
Exactly. And you can have someone at the front desk do that. That just
Right.
part of their role in the process. And then the take two process is, now this is something we use for tours, for the move-in process, even for employee orientation, for train. I do it after every training, and it's very simple. It's basically a reflection on how things went. So after every tour, you ask the question, what went well? What did we do? The second question is, what could we have done better? Where was there room for improvement? And I always want to stop here because a lot of times people's instinct will be if they had called ahead, or if they had done this, or if they had done that. And I want to really highlight that no, this is about you.
Yeah, this is ownership.
Yeah, this is what I'm sure. What could you have done? So let's say if they'd come on time. Okay, what is it that you could do to better communicate, to better confirm, to better if they had called ahead? Okay, what is it that we can do to prepare for the fact that we know we're going to have tours, right? That
Yeah.
don't call ahead, right? And so always focus on what can we do, what can we do, what can we do? And then the third column is what are you going to do to turn those next time to turn those misses into hits? Next time we're going to do this. And if you do this consistently, you're going to find you have fewer misses and a lot more hits, right?
Yeah.
Because you're constantly questioning. It's about continuous improvement. And that's why I call it take two, right? Just like your first take in a movie camera, in a movie, and then we're going to take two. Let's make this better or make it different in some way. And so one of the successes we've had with this was actually with a community in their dining department. So they started doing the take two process after every private dining party that they would give. He came up to me, the dining room manager came up to me afterwards and said, we didn't want to do it. We felt like it was busy work, but the boss said to use the tool and we did this. And he said, now we have a waiting list of people who want to do private dining parties.
Yeah.
And I said to him, oh, are you mad at me now? Like you have more work to do? He said, no, this is good because this is a profit center for us. So we've
Right.
actually increased our profits in these private dining. And the one thing we did differently was do a take two and just make them better and better. And word got around, right? And so
Yeah.
you could do that with your tour experience. You can do that with the move-in experience as well. It's all about continuous improvement.
Yeah, those are great examples. One other kind of pet peeve I'd like to put in here is where you do discovery matters. I can't tell you how many people have done a lot of secret shopping. I've also looked on behalf of my mom who moved into an assisted living. So I was the adult daughter touring and either being brought into an office with a lot of paperwork and folders and stuff sitting across from a desk was very awkward and uncomfortable, or they would bring me into this big like corporate conference room thing. So really making sure that you're carving out a comfortable space, trying to find that maybe lounge that nobody really uses at the end of the hallway, or a little library or a nook. And if you don't have any of that, equip the model apartment to be
Yeah,
that comfortable, cozy spot. But
yeah.
don't make it a business conference. The minute you bring somebody into a conference room or an office setting, you are making it a transactional business conversation.
And I think, thank you for bringing that up because I think that's so important, especially from my perspective now, right, as a family member. Because while I might have thought that I understood the emotions that family members go through, I had no idea.
Yep.
And whether it's a prospective resident, or their family members, I can only speak at this point from the family member perspective.
Yep.
The guilt, right? The
Yeah.
the number of logistics that you're having to figure out, and even being in the field, like I had no idea. And being my
Yeah.
mother's power of attorney, it's really a full-time job for a company.
Yeah.
And then the pushback that you might be getting from your family members, and knowing that you're doing something that they probably don't want, but that they definitely need. And how are we going to do this? And then just the stress that you and perhaps your siblings have been under. the more personal you can make this, the more like you're just listening because you have empathy, not because it's a transaction. Setting matters, building trust, like sharing information, but also really listening and validating people's feelings and all of that. So important. And I want to talk a little about building trust too, because I'll give you a not such a great example, and then I'll give you a great example. So, not such a great example was a friend of mine, Dave, when he moved his mom into assisted living. One of the promises that was made that was that new cabinets were going to be in her apartment, which for whatever reason, his mom really latched onto that. And
Yeah.
she would talk about the new cabinets that were going to be there. And then when they got there were no new cabinets.
Oh, how do you recover from that?
I know. And then so he called, and they'll be there tomorrow. And then no. And then a week later, and then the executive director actually stopped answering, like responding to his
Oh,
call, which probably they were thinking once we have some information, we'll call him back. But that did not make a great impression. And I remember Dave telling me that he and his brother, they were so happy that couldn't have gone better, so excited. And then it just all went downhill from there. Like the
yeah,
real sale is made after they move it, like after
yeah,
the sale is made. Because that's with mine, I want to say that the place we actually ended up moving my mom into, they were very forthcoming about some things. Like they were very, there was a high level of trust. One, they knew we were looking at another place. They knew what the place was. They did not badmouth it, did nothing to badmouth that place, which increased my trust level in them. But also there was something there. Actually, their activities are wonderful, but because they have a lot of very independent residents with cars and things like that, they were a little concerned that their activities were not going to meet the level that we were hoping for my mom. And they brought that up. They said, here's what we have, this is what we don't have. And it didn't actually detract. It made me feel like, oh wow, these people are going to be honest with us. This is not just a sales pitch. And I really want to encourage people to think about, obviously, you don't want to point out all the negatives, but at the same time, don't make promises you can't deliver on.
yeah,
And because then you lose them, and you could and even if you don't lose them as residents, now you have somebody out there who's talking about how you said one thing and this is actually what happened. Right.
yeah. And even if you try to recover from it and you try to go above and beyond for other things, they always refer back to, yeah, but mom didn't get those cabinets. And it's like that once you lose that trust and you don't follow through on that, then it plants a seed of what else can't I trust you with, or what else are you not going to be following through with?
Yeah. And I think also a lot of that is just working with the team. My husband was a maintenance director, right?
Yeah,
So in my mind, I could tell you probably what happened is that there are specific like codes that have to be met or permits that have to be pulled or all these things that maybe the sales and marketing department doesn't know. So they're like, oh yeah, we can get those in 2 days. And the maintenance director is going, no, we can't get them in. And so it's that communication piece with the entire team too that I think is really important.
no, I think you're right, because a lot of times we'll promise new carpet and then they just extract the carpet, right? Or we'll say that the apartment's going to be repainted and it's just really touched up. And
Right.
those are very different. So making sure that we're managing expectations and being clear. And if something's going to be delayed, letting people know we extracted it because your mom needed to move in quickly, but we do have it on the books to replace the carpet in X number of months. It's just being proactive.
And Deborah, if we have time, I'll just will share another anecdote related to getting your team ready.
Yeah, be great.
Like getting understanding that the role that the team plays, every point of connection is yet another relationship. And so to take the time to not just tell people to the role that they play in the tour, but to actually get them in a room and practice eye contact. Not everybody's great at that, right?
Yeah.
Practice the smiles, but also practice how do you talk to people as we're walking people through a tour? How do you talk to residents? All of those things. But since we're focused on the tour, I'll tell you one of them, we did not end up at this community, but we walked through and the marketing director said, "Oh, this is Joe." I'm making that name up, but this is Joe. Joe, how long have you been here? And he just went, "Too long."
Yeah.
I felt so bad for that marketing director, but it did make an impact. My sister and I in the parking lot afterwards going, "He doesn't like working there." So really the importance of that too, because those are the kinds of things that people are looking at.
Yeah, and I think the last thing we can really touch on, I think it dovetails well with this, is making sure that people meet your team members before they move in so they don't always come back to the salesperson because you haven't transitioned those points of connection. Because I feel like a lot of the misses happen in that handshake between sales and then the operational team. And that really impacts building brand ambassadors who are going to leave you positive reviews and are going to participate in your friend and family referral program. And people are talking about you negatively or positively. So you might as well make sure you're doing everything you can to give them good things to say.
And also everybody has different information, right? So in the place where we chose for mom, they did that really well. We met not just the sales and marketing director, but the executive director, the DON. They brought us in to meet some of the staff. We met some of the staff along the way. And this happened several times right up until the move-in day. And yeah, so important. Those relationships are everything. You can have a 5 or 7 star building, but a 3 star experience. But you could also have a 3 star building and a 7 star experience, right? And that's about the relationships that people make.
I love that because so often it's, oh, we have a 25-year-old building, we can't possibly compete. But you're saying that service is really not only the equalizer, but it really can be your competitive advantage, even if you don't have the 5-star amenities.
Yes, it's the connections. It's the connections that people make with other people that make the difference.
And is there anything that stands out as you worked with these communities around maybe an example of somebody who's really gone out of their way to orchestrate a great move in day experience and that whole transition, that whole 30 days? I think I saw in the state of Massachusetts, 17% of move outs happen in the first 30 days.
Is that right?
Yeah, and it's not, those aren't necessarily bad move ins. That's just somebody who didn't feel that sense of belonging, who didn't transition well into the community. Do you have any examples you can share?
Yeah, so I'll tell a couple. I know a lot of communities now who literally, and I don't know if this is because they heard me or they came up with it on their own, but I know a lot of communities now who, depending on the person, because this is, you want to also know your audience. Some people this would not be a fit for. But
Yeah,
I've seen videos of people literally rolling out the red carpet and having people applaud when they come in.
yeah.
Um, the best example I know of is Mather. So the Mather communities, and they do everything from when someone comes in, that refrigerator is stocked, or at least I'll tell you they used to. I haven't, this was maybe a few years ago, but I stayed with them, and the first thing was they had an orange carpet because their color is orange. I walked into the guest room, and I Think I Love You from David Cassidy was playing on the CD player. And I literally went, "Oh, David." And then I asked, and they told me that for every guest, but also every new resident, they find out what their favorite song is, and it's playing when they walk into the commute into their apartment.
Wow.
And when they go down to the dining room, so I went down to the dining room for lunch, and they had my name on the menu. And
Wow.
I'm gonna tell you, this is actually a great little tip. So I asked, it was Gail at the time, I asked Gail, I said, how come you can get all this done when a lot of my other clients will fight me tooth and nail?
Right?
It's 4 steps. Number one, we have one idea, 1 or 2 ideas at a time that we're trying to implement. So we'll come up with, say, let's put the name on their menu for the first week. Okay. Number two is we have all the little conversations about the logistics of making that happen. Number three is that we expect the pushback. So in other words, everyone's going to push back and say it's not possible, right? And
Yep.
that just expect that's going to happen. But we keep having the conversation until we get to number four, which is we're going to test it out, try it, see how it goes, and refine it until it just becomes the way we do things. And that's what happened with the name on the menu. It's like, yeah, they had who was going to own it, how much time it was going to take, how they were going to do it. But they just kept having the conversation like, no, we want to get this done. Let's figure out how to get it done with everybody. And then now it's just something that they do.
That's wonderful. And they had just the basics in the refrigerator. So if you needed a cold drink, or
Yeah.
think about move-in day and how chaotic move-in day can be. And
Also, just information. I'll just say that as a family member, like the more proactive you could be, especially if you don't have a move-in coordinator, because typically what would that move-in coordinator do is like helping you with the move. So if you don't have that, even just a printed, this is what move-in day looks like. Here are the resources. Here's who's going to be here to greet you. These are the best times to have your move-in company. Like all of that just printed. So you're, as family members or as residents, you're not having to call and find all that information out. What are all the questions people ask? Put it on a fact sheet. Even
yeah.
that wouldn't be helpful.
Yeah, I love that. I know when my mom moved in, some of the simplest things, like she didn't know how to work the heat and air conditioning. Like when you move into a new place, like it's all different. That microwave has different settings than your microwave at home. And so really going through that checklist, making sure that people feel comfortable in their new surroundings or know how to get an appointment at the hair salon, or where do I go to book transportation, or all the little nuances that when you're new, you just don't know. And those ambassador programs where somebody can take a new resident under their wing and have the first few meals with them and show them around and show them the ins and outs of the community from the resident perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll also add the more everything you learned in discovery, and I understand privacy protection laws, and at the same time, the more information you can share with the key people who need to know, so that the DON, the executive director, the sales and marketing person, the dining direct, like everybody's on the same page and has information. It's not being so that there's not, it's like I just punched in my last 4 digits of my social security number. Why are you asking for me this again? So
Yeah.
more people can be on the same page, I think the better. And sometimes I think that's missing.
Yeah, I agree. I think August Health, give them a plug. They have a great kind of a family portal. So families can just add the life history and the stories, and it shares automatically with the rest of the team. And it's surprising to me how many communities are still paper-based, and they're having you fill out page and page of the same information over and over again. And then you move in and find out it wasn't really shared, and you're answering the same questions after you move in that you've already been through
Right.
before. So it's really putting yourself in the place of the resident. I love David Smith, prospect centered selling. Prospect centered selling doesn't end with the sale. Like everything should be around through the eyes of putting the prospect at the center of what are they going to do when they move in and have their first night in this apartment? Are they going to know how to set their thermostat to be comfortable? Are they going to know how to turn off the light or the lamp that might be in a new place? Like, how do you create those experiences for your team to then be able to have the empathy and the emotional intelligence to create the right environment?
Because in many ways, as we've talked about before, getting that check is the beginning of the sale. It's not the end. Right.
Yes.
So that's really going to, are they going to refer you to others? How are they talking about you out in the community? Are you going to get those positive reviews? All of those depend on not the tour experience, but the move-in experience and beyond.
Donna, thank you so much for coming by and sharing your senior living marketing perspective with us. If people want to get in touch, we're going to make sure that everything is in the show notes. And Donna, I think you and I are going to try to host a webinar walking through some of these best practices in the near future.
Yes, absolutely. So we can even set that up so we have a link that we can put in the show notes.
That would be great. And if anyone wants to reach out to Donna to help her create your tourific experience and move-in process, Donna is the best place, LinkedIn?
You absolutely connect with me on LinkedIn, but also you can visit our website, which is redcarpetlearning.com, and then email me. It's very easy, Donna, Donna, at redcarpetlearning.com.
Thanks so much, Donna.
Thank you.